The winds they blew across the sea, a mighty force deep inside of me. I once was blind, but now I see from the mighty winds of change. The gale force blew away my pride, took down the walls I'd built inside. The waves washed over the tears I cried, the mighty winds of change. A mighty wave, it's amazing grace. How sweet the sound when the wind swept me away. Oh, the mighty winds of
everyone, I'm Apostle Dr. Lee Ann Marino here for Apostolic Fellowship International Ministries, and today on Power for Today, we're doing something a little bit different. Ordinarily, I answer questions that I receive from people, whether it's online or they send them to me at questions@powerfortoday.org or things that come up in everyday conversation. But today, I'm addressing an issue that I keep seeing over and over and over again, especially online. And the message today is titled, Chiefest Apostles, You Can't Fix Stupid. Recently, a heated debate ensued on my Facebook page, started by someone who was calling herself Chiefest Apostle. We're not going to blame the debate on the fact that someone asked what exactly a Chiefest Apostle is because he hadn't heard of it. This woman came on my page to fight, and as politely and with as much decorum as I had, I tried to be civil with her, especially given the status she wanted to fight about was a status about not taking fights too far. But when the question of what exactly was a chiefest apostle came up, she became particularly defensive and irate. When she herself kept pushing me to answer the question as to what one was, I openly stated, well, I was trying not to disgrace you, but, with my answer following, to which she sent me a lengthy inbox reply about the defense of the term and why she felt she had the right to use it. Even in private conversation, I pointed out to her that her use of the term was not supported in the Greek text of the Bible, and for that matter, it wasn't even supported in the English text, to which she told me in quotations how I was entitled to my opinion on the matter, and then became quite condescending. What I finally started to realize was it was not going to matter what I was going to say. You can't fix stupid. If she really felt that she was right, nothing to the contrary was going to cause her to step back or even allow common sense, not any proof about the English or the Greek text, or even just everyday ordinary reason and conversation. She was going to remain stupid on this and not allow the topic to be fixed. When God called me to be an apostle back in 2003, nobody called themselves apostle. I hadn't even heard of an apostle, let alone chief apostle, chiefest apostle, super apostle, and master prophet, now of which we all hear in common everyday ordinary conversation, especially on the internet. It was just a struggle for me to accept being an apostle and comes to terms with that call, let alone all of these superlatives added to the call. It's also interesting to note that we don't see these in other offices. For example, you don't ever hear of a chief evangelist, a super teacher, or master pastor. We only hear these designations applied to the apostolic and prophetic offices. Why is that? Where did they come from? And, well, are they biblical? I've spent probably close to 20 years studying church history of both the church itself and specific denominations, and the designations of chief apostle, chiefest apostle, super apostle, and master prophet are not found in the legitimate church of the New Testament, nor are the subsequent centuries of the church filled with people with these titles. Nobody legitimate was ever called these things, not even the biblical apostles and prophets themselves, who were duly called of God and proved their office. That needs to tell us two things. The first being that A, such a designation is unnecessary, even unbiblical, and B, these designations in acceptance are newer, modern time distinctions made to somehow create distinction designations within the offices of apostle and prophet. I've heard numerous theories as to what these designations are supposed to mean. For example, many people argue that a chief apostle is an apostle that covers either other leaders or other apostles. But if we're going to be technical as to what apostles do, covering leaders is what an apostle does. And most apostles probably do cover other apostles, at least at some point in their ministry. So the chief apostle designation is therefore totally and completely unnecessary. The chiefest apostle designation is likewise just totally absurd. It's a designation that perverts the words of Mark 10:44. And whosoever of you will be the chiefest shall be servant of all. Into a designative office, trying to somehow boast that a leader is the servant of more people than some other leader. Now, the Greek doesn't support this understanding of it in this context. And Jesus never uses the term chiefest apostle to refer to any human being who was an apostle in the New Testament. There is not one of an apostolic office. In fact, I would really kind of venture that Jesus would have deliberately not done it, because if we look at the debate that started from Mark 10:44, if we look at the different debates present in the New Testament, the apostles themselves already had issues with trying to figure out who was the greatest or who was the best or who was the chief or who was in charge. And so Jesus would not have given them individual designations, because that would have created further competition and totally undone his whole point of trying to teach them about service. There is no chiefest apostle designation in the New Testament, but rather this word in Mark 10:44 is saying that whoever is the one that aspires to bless and serve others is the greatest servant. And that is true of anybody, whether they in the fivefold ministry or not. Master prophet is somebody's weird concoction, and super apostle, well, that just sounds like a character for a comic strip. But what is it that we need to be noting here? I am not one who believes we should just abolish titles. I think that the just do work without the title argument is lame, and it is lame for one reason: because God established the fivefold ministry as a gift to the church, and those who do that work should be noted by that work. It's being honest with the church, is being honest and acknowledging what God has done within us, and in turn the church is acknowledging the work that God has done in its service to God's gift of the fivefold ministry. These distinctions within the office of apostle and prophet, however, are bad, simply because they create division within the offices. Apostles and prophets are called to do what apostles and prophets do, and we need to stop this different capacities of service notions. The word is really clear about what apostles and prophets do, and if you can't figure it out, it's not the word's fault, it's yours, and you can't fix stupid. I think the bottom line of this issue is that either the designations are biblical and in accordance with a true understanding of the word, or they aren't, and we can clearly clarify here that they are not. So don't just use ignorance as an excuse, or blame your leader, or blame that somebody called you that, or blame it on the fact that you don't speak Greek to justify an inability to understand it and justify it. In 2 Corinthians 11, 1-15, the Apostle Paul himself addresses the issue of these chief apostles and chiefest apostles with the following words. And let's go there now. And I'm going to be reading from the King James Version of the Bible. You can follow along with any translation that you feel comfortable with. Starting in verse 1. Would to God ye could bear with me a little in my folly, and indeed bear with me. For I am jealous over you with godly jealousy, for I have espoused you to one husband, that I may present you as a chaste virgin to Christ. But I fear lest by any means, as the serpent beguiled Eve through his subtlety, so your mind should be corrupted from the simplicity that is in Christ. For if he cometh, preacheth another Jesus, whom we have not preached, or if ye receive another spirit, which ye have not received, or another gospel which ye have not accepted, ye might well bear with him. For I suppose I was not a whit behind the very chiefest apostles. But though I be rude in speech, yet not in knowledge, but we have been thoroughly made manifest among you in all things. Have I committed an offense in abasing myself, that ye might be exalted, because I have preached to you the gospel of God freely? I robbed other churches, taking wages of them to do you service. And when I was present with you and wanted, I was chargeable to no man. For that which was lacking to me, the brethren came from Macedonia supplied. And in all things I have kept myself from being burdensome unto you, and so will I keep myself. As the truth of Christ is in me, no man shall stop me of this boasting in the regions of Achaia. Wherefore, because I love you not, God knoweth. But what I do, that will I do, that I may cut off occasion from them which desire occasion, that wherein they glory, that they may be found, even as we. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness, whose end shall be according to their works. I say again, let no man think me a fool, if otherwise, yet as a fool receive me, that I may boast myself a little. In other words, let's look very carefully at the Greek, at the sarcasm, and at the terminology used here. The Apostle Paul was being sarcastic. He was being sarcastic in his discourse, and he was being ironic. People apparently tried to use the terms chiefest apostle or chief apostle to appear to be something they weren't, even once upon a time. It's in the Word. But note that the Apostle Paul himself identifies such that call themselves by these titles as false apostles. They disguise themselves as the apostles of God, but their designation automatically identifies them as being false. They may look right, say all the right things, do all the right things, but underneath they are completely false. Having to use such a designation, having to outdo somebody else or compare yourself to another apostle, automatically shows that they do not have a right understanding of the apostolic office. 2 Corinthians 12, 1 through 16 goes on to clarify that the Apostle Paul will clarify his humility and be the least of these stark raving mad idiots, and just an apostle, because God doesn't call people to these ridiculous designations within the apostolic office. And let's go now there. 2 Corinthians 12, 1 through 16. It is not expedient for me, doubtless, to glory. I will come to visions and revelations of the Lord. I knew a man in Christ about 14 years ago, whether in the body I cannot tell, or whether out of the body I cannot tell, but God knoweth. Such an one caught up to the third heaven, and I knew such a man, whether in the body or out of the body I cannot tell, God knoweth. How that he was caught up into paradise, and heard unspeakable words, which is not unlawful for a man to utter. Of such a one I will glory, yet of myself I will not glory, but in mine infirmities. For though I would desire to glory, I shall not be a fool, for I will say the truth, but now I forbear, lest any man should think of me above that which he hath seen to be, or that he heareth of me. And lest I should be exalted above measure, through the abundance of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. For this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I will rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. I am become a fool in glorying, ye have compelled me, for I ought to have been commended of you. For in nothing I am behind the very chiefest apostles, though I be nothing. Truly the signs of an apostle will wrought among you in all patience, in signs and wonders and mighty deeds. For what is it wherein ye were inferior to other churches, except it be that I myself was not burdensome to you? Forgive me this wrong. Behold, the third time I am ready to come to you, and I will not be burdensome to you, for I seek not yours but you. For the children ought not to lay up for the parents, but the parents for the children. And I will very gladly spend and be spent for you, though the more abundantly I love you, the less I be loved. But be it so, I did not burden you. Nevertheless, being crafty, I caught you with guile. So in other words, just because people call themselves these things doesn't mean that they are. And Paul was clarifying, fine, I'll be the least of them. I will be behind them. These chiefest apostles, in a tone of sarcasm and irony, proving that what they were doing was not only wrong, it was stupid. Here I sit before you. I am Lee Ann Marino. just apostle. I am just an apostle. I am no better than Paul and will not exceed myself to be any greater than the call of any of these people throughout history. I know that I'm just doing what God asked of me, and what that is defined by the office of apostle. Just apostle. I am not a chief nor a chiefest, not a super. I am just apostle. Just God's apostle. I am sincerely saying to all, as an apostle of God, as a just apostle, that we need to truly come into an understanding of the fivefold ministry, and especially that of apostles and prophets. The more they rise up, that we may not be led astray and may not become impressed with all these varied things, concepts, and designations. We are not here to outdo each other in ministry. We are not here to turn this into a big competition noted by superlatives, but rather we are here to do the work of God. So instead of sitting around thinking of ways to outdo the Lord, because he is the only chief apostle according to the book of Hebrews, with all these ridiculous designations, go out and do something for somebody else. Find a better way to be a servant to God's people and stop sitting around thinking about you. I think I've had enough of my chief and chiefest hearings and master and super to last me the rest of my life. I don't like hanging out with people that need to try and be better than me. I like hanging out with just apostles and just prophets and just evangelists and just pastors and just teachers. And for the record, I don't want to hear any more about chiefs or chiefess unless we're playing a game of cowboys and Indians. Thank you for watching the program today. If you've got a comment or a question, please email it to me. Perhaps we'll use it on the future program at questions@powerfortoday.org. This is Apostle Dr. Lee Ann saying thank you for watching the program today. And remember, God's power can be yours because through Jesus Christ there is power for today.
I was lost in a raging sea. The storms were overtaking me, sinking fast into the sea. Then came mighty winds of change. My sails took course with land in sight. The lighthouse shone in the midst of night, turned me around and gave me light. Oh, the mighty winds of change.